I thought this leader was going to be trash until I played her. By the way, if you want to see a deck list, here it is if you want to check that out. But I gotta say, I was totally wrong about Rebecca. Rebecca is kind of wild. Yeah, this is a leader that can't attack, but her ability plus a lot of the Dressrosa type cards all have kind of amazing effects. It feels very defensive at times. It feels very powerful at times, thanks to Luffy. Honestly, I'm kind of astounded. So in this video, we're going to be going over the core of the deck, the essentials, and the flex, the types of cards that you can change out to make this deck really fit your own playstyle. But first, we gotta talk about the leader. So Rebecca is a 5,000 power, 5 life, multicolor leader, black and blue, and has a kind of unique leader ability. So this leader cannot attack, but don't worry, it's not as bad as that sounds. And then activate main once per turn for 1 Dawn. If you have 6 or less cards in your hand, look at the top 2 of your deck, reveal a Dressrosa type card, and then add to your hand, then trash the remainder. And yes, that is trash, not bottom deck, because the whole point of the Dressrosa package wants you to build up your trash, and you'll start seeing why once I go into the core cards. So speaking of the core, we gotta talk about the Searcher, one of the most important pieces for any meta relevant deck, and here we have character Rebecca. 1 cost to play, 2,000 power, counter plus 1k, but on play, look at 3 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 Dressrosa type card other than Rebecca, add to your hand, then trash the rest. Next up, we do have Orlumbus. So this is 4 cost to play, 5,000 power, counter plus 1k, but he has a really unique and kind of interesting ability. Activate main once per turn. Give up to one of your opponent's characters -4 cost during this turn, and then trash 2 cards from the top of your deck. Then KO one of your Dressrosa type characters. So not only is this an activate main ability that you don't have to rest Orlumbus, but you can also, accomplish what the deck wants to do. You trash 2 cards from the top of your deck, and then you can KO one of your Dressrosa types, putting it into your trash. Typically, you'll probably use your Searcher Rebecca, or if I'll talk about him later, but Leo, any of the sort of smaller characters that have really awesome on-play abilities, but then are kind of useless in the rest of the match, Orlumbus can take them out pretty easily. Or you can pair this ability with our next core card, Kyros. So 3 cost to play, 5,000 power, no counter, but if this character would be KO'd, you may rest your leader or 1 Kurita Coliseum instead. So you could use Kyros as a target for your Orlumbus ability, and then because it would be KO'd, instead rest your leader or rest your stage card. And that way you fulfill the requirements of Orlumbus and you get to keep your 5k attacker out on the field. Also, Orlumbus and Kyros have really good synergy with each other because you can -4 cost something and then use Kyros' on play ability, which is if your leader is Rebecca, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 1 or less, then trash 1 card from top of your deck. Anything that's 4 or cost or lower is automatically KO'd by this wombo combo. So yeah, the Dressrosa type cards have a lot of control-y elements of it, which is honestly really kind of awesome to see. And then of course there is the greatest type of board control out there in the game, Raw Fist. That's right, Monkey D. Luffy, Gear 4th Luffy, is next up on our core cards. 7 cost to play, 7,000 power, no counter, but he doesn't need it because he is just pure offense. Listen, this character can attack active characters, which is wild. And if you pair with Kurita Coliseum, which we'll talk about in a bit, it can attack characters on the turn that it comes out. Wild. But even more wild is his other ability. Activate main once per turn. You may return 7 cards from your trash to the bottom of your deck in any order. Then set Luffy as active. Then during your next refresh phase, this character cannot be set to active. So it does have a little bit of a steep price, which thematically with the show, that's kind of awesome to see. But essentially you get 2 swings with Monkey D. Luffy. And then just to clarify, because I had to clarify with someone yesterday, it means that you are sort of locked and frozen during the refresh phase, but you can use the ability again to get him upright and then swing with him. So on the turn that you activate the ability first, you get the 2 hits, but on subsequent turns, you still can get a single hit, right? By restanding him using his ability. But remember, it does cost 7 cards from your trash each and every time you do this. But there is a lot of things that you can do with Gear 4th Luffy, and I kind of love it. Last but not least, we gotta talk about Kurita Coliseum, the first stage card since Onigashima that is considered probably a core part of this entire deck. 1 cost to play, but if your leader has a Dressrosa type, your characters that have Dressrosa type can attack characters on the turn they are played. Keep in mind, this does not mean that it has Rush, right? It just means that they can attack characters, which if you combine this with your Gear 4th Luffy, right? That means it can attack upper right characters or active characters. So this stage combined with Luffy can really clear some boards. But yeah, there are a lot of core cards for this, so it is a little bit of a tight deck, right? And that's kind of reflected in how short our essentials lists are. But going into it, first up on our essentials, we do have Leo. He's a 1 cost to play, 2000 power, counter, plus 1k. But on play, you can rest your leader, and then if your leader has a Dressrosa type, KO up to one of your opponent's cost 1 or lower characters, then trash 2 cards from the top of your deck. So once again, this is another form of removal for the Dressrosa type, and once again, it's a viable target to remove with your Orlumbus ability. Next up, we got Bartolomeo. He's an essential because he's Dressrosa type. He is a 2k counter, he is a blocker, and he's Bartolomeo. Come on, put some respect on that art. That's awesome. But speaking of awesome art and awesome characters, our last essential is Sabo. So 5 cost to play, 6000 power, counter plus 1k. But on play, your characters cannot be KO'd by card effects until the start of your next turn, which is incredible. And then draw 2, trash 2 from your hand. So yeah, fairly reasonable cost, good attack, has a counter, has an ability that protects your other cards, and has card cycling. Honestly, this is the perfect card. And if you're keeping track, this is a super rare from the OP04 set, so this one's going to be a popular one, not going to lie. And to be honest, and I know I'm not talking about, generic black decks like Smoker or Lucci right now, but this guy pretty much replaces, some of the cards that you would have been playing in that, right? Sure, not searchable, but if you're not worried about that, this is a plug and play in any of those decks. And then last but not least, let's get into our flex cards. Starting off with Gyatz. I'm honestly not sure how to pronounce his name, but Gyatz is 1 cost to play, a 1000 power, counter plus 2k, so very nice 2k counter. And then on play, up to one of your Dressrosa type characters can also attack active characters during this turn. Essentially, you give that portion of Luffy's ability to any one of your other Dressrosa types. So your Kyrios or your Orlumbus can attack active characters. Next up, we do have Ideo, 2 cost to play, 2000 power, counter plus 1k. He's just a cheap blocker. I put him as a flex mostly because you could theoretically put any blocker in here in this slot, but this is nice because it is searchable by both Rebecca as well as, I guess Rebecca, the character. Next up, a little bit of an interesting one, we have Tashigi. So 3 cost to play, 4000 power, counter plus 2k, but activate main, you can rest this character to give up to one of your opponent's characters, minus 2 cost for this turn. Now, once again, I put this as a flex because you could theoretically put in I forgot her name. Suru. Now, I put this as a flex because you theoretically could put in the Suru here, the 1 cost to play on play that does this very same thing. But a couple reasons for Tashigi. One, Tashigi is still cheap enough to play. It is 4000 power, so if you do need another attacker, you can easily power her up to become viable. And the thing is, you can play her and not use the ability, and then wait until you need it, then use it, right? There's very few situations where that particular thing happens, but it is something you can do. Yeah, essentially the reason I chose it is because it's more useful on the board as opposed to Suru, who is kind of just dead weight. And then last but not least is a choice I'm still struggling with, and it's 3000 Worlds. So this is 4 cost to play, main ability, place up to 1 character with a cost of 5 or less to the bottom of its owner's deck. Then, as a trigger, place up to a character with a cost of 3 or less to the bottom of its owner's deck. So, why am I struggling with this? If you know about the OP04 set, you might know that there's actually a much sort of better removal ability. Gum Gum Red Rock. 6 cost to play, main ability, place up to 1 character at the bottom of its owner's deck, and then trigger, place up to a character with a cost of 4 or less to the bottom of its owner's deck. So for 2 more Dawn, you can bottom deck anything. And I think this is where I want to kind of like play test the two things a little bit more. But I think the thing I want to know is it too expensive? Now I chose 3000 Worlds because I think that there are more problematic 5-cost characters that should be removed pretty quickly off the board. And with 3000 Worlds, I can still play an Orlumbus or any of my 5-cost or lower characters. Obviously with Red Rock, it's 6 cost to play, so it kind of limits what else I can kind of follow up with. But in my playtesting so far, I haven't really encountered, say a Big Mom that does run a much larger character that is not targetable by 3000 Worlds. So let me know in the comments which event card you actually think is the better play here. But other than that minor conundrum, the deck is pretty, simple and straightforward to play. You have your really cool combos with Curios and Orlumbus, and you have your heavy hitters like Gear 4th Luffy. So let's check out what it looks like all together. First of all, we got 1 copy of Rebecca, 4 copies of Gats, 4 copies of Leo, 4 copies of Rebecca the Character Searcher, 4 copies of Ideo, 4 copies Bartolomeo, 4 of Tashigi, 4 copies of Curios, 4 copies of Orlumbus, there's a lot of 4 copies, 4 copies of Sabo, 4 copies of Monkey D. Luffy, 4 copies of King Kong Gun, and then we have 3 copies of 3000 Worlds and 3 copies of Kurita Coliseum. And that's my take on the Rebecca deck. Honestly, I think it's a load of fun, but I have heard that there's actually a couple variations of Rebecca being floated on the internet, so check out my fellow content creators, see what they're posting, see what types of cards they're including. Are they including Red Rock? Do they have less King Kong Gun? Do they run the barrier event card because Bartolomeo's awesome? Let me know. But yeah, I think Rebecca is going to be a popular deck in the English version of OP04. But if you want to check out some other OP04 deck profiles, click the video over here.